When I was 11 years old, my family and I lived in an apartment complex called Playa Vista in National City, California. Before I start, I think I should set the stage by describing the layout of the apartment complex. Basically, the whole complex is in the shape of a rectangle. There's two exit points, one in the front that leads to the street and one in the back that leads to residential parking. There's three ways to get to the upstairs apartments via a staircase on the left, right, and back middle of the complex. My family and I lived in the upstairs apartments at the far back of the left corner. I should also mention that in the middle of the complex there is a big patch of grass with lots of flowers, bushes, and trees surrounding it. The plants were a lot more overgrown back in 2009, so it made going out at night a little freaky. One day I woke up from a very strange dream. All I could remember was walking up the stairs and up to our apartment door. As I was opening it, I could hear crying and voices cracking with pain. As I stepped in, I realized my mom, dad, two brothers, and my Aunt Gabby were all in the living room crying their eyes out. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I started panicking, and then I woke up. I was still panicked, confused as to why everyone was crying. I finally calmed down after reminding myself that it was only a dream, and nothing had actually happened. A few weeks later, my brothers and I are outside playing hide-and-go-seek in between the plants and trees. We were stepping all over the grass, which the manager was not a big fan of, so we stopped playing for the time being when she called us out on it. The three of us head back upstairs because we were thirsty. Once we were inside, my mom told us that she wanted us to clean our room because our Aunt Gabby would be visiting us the next day. My Aunt Gabby lives in Mexico, so we don't get to see her often. Needless to say, we were all excited. The next day, we were all anxiously awaiting for my Aunt Gabby to arrive. She finally arrives to our place around 9 p.m. I remember being really excited to see her. We all went downstairs and out front where she was parked to help her with her luggage. Once we were all back inside, we sat and talked in the living room for about an hour before my aunt said she had a surprise for us. She gave me the keys to her car and told me to bring up the two black trash bags in her trunk. As I was heading down the stairs, I remember thinking about walking through the grass, but remembered my encounter with the manager the day before. So I decided to go around the grass, which allowed me to see the fence at the front of the apartments and a tall dark figure standing in the corner. Had I gone through the grass, I would not have seen it because of the brick wall and trees directly in front of the exit gate. I was a little scared of what the figure might have been. We didn't necessarily live in the best area. I decided to turn around and go the other way, but when I looked back to the corner, the figure was gone. So I turned back around and cautiously continued. Once I exited the apartments, I popped the car trunk open, took two large black trash bags out, locked the car, and headed back upstairs. As I was walking up to our apartment door, I could hear crying and screaming. I ran inside, asking everyone what had happened, but they were all too choked up to answer. Finally, my mom let it out. She told me that they had just received a phone call saying that my favorite uncle had just been murdered in Mexico. To say I was devastated would be an understatement. I felt my chest cave in, my head start hurting, and I cried like I've never cried before. My uncle didn't necessarily live the safest life, but he was saving up enough money to be able to move to the US after losing his son, my cousin, a year prior to his own death. To this day, I still think about that dream I had a few weeks before my aunt visited us, and I still think about that dark figure I saw in the corner that night and what they may have meant. It all seems like a big coincidence, I know, but this wasn't the first time or the last time that something like this had happened to me. I miss my uncle and my cousin every day. I just wish they could have made it over. I sat up and turned off my alarm. I look over at my boyfriend Marcus, who somehow stayed asleep laying peacefully. "Wish I could sleep as heavy as you," I muttered, a small smile curling at the corners of my mouth. I stepped out on the cold hardwood floors and made my way to the bathroom. Reaching for my toothbrush, I accidentally knock over my lotion. "Are you okay?" says Marcus in a groggy voice. "I'm fine. I'm sorry for waking you up." I picked up the lotion and examined what's left inside. I should probably buy a new one soon, I thought to myself. After I finished brushing my teeth, I walked back into the bedroom and finished packing my bags. "Are you sure you want to go camping tonight? I know it's not really your thing," Marcus jokes. "Yeah, I think I could use a little time away from everything. I've been working such long hours at work. It feels like I'm going to fall apart. Camping definitely isn't my favorite thing to do, but if it helps me relax a little, I think I can handle a few days." We pack everything in the car and start our road trip. Marcus has property out in the woods, so we normally go there when we do this. There's a small trailer there, but it's always locked, so we take a tent. Once we arrived at the property, we set up the tent. Oh, this tent. It's so complicated to put together. You'd think after doing it so many times we would figure it out, but there's just so many parts to it. Okay, now where are the pegs? Asks Marcus, slightly out of breath. 1 second, I'm looking for them, I say, as I rummage through the tent bag. Ah yes, here it is. I found them. Here, I say excitedly as I hand them over. Even though it takes forever to put this thing up, it's always worth it, he says as we both stare at its size. Such a big tent for 2 people. Not that I'm complaining, this thing could probably fit about 8 people in it. I finish putting our bags inside and set up the sleeping bags. Normally sleeping bags are one of the reasons I don't like camping, but these new ones we ordered are actually kind of nice. They're big enough that you can still move around inside, and they are super warm. Maybe this camping trip won't be so bad after all. Nightfall arrives and Marcus is starting to have a steady fire going. It gets pretty cold at the property since it's kind of close to water. You can see it over the trees. It's actually pretty peaceful up here, but I always have the slight feeling that something's off. It's probably just knowing that we are surrounded by trees that are hiding animals. I don't worry about it too much, but it does still creep me out a little. You ready for some marshmallows? Marcus asks, waving the bag in front of my face. Of course I am. Hand them over, jerk. I snatch them from his hand and give him a sly smirk. You want it? You have to come get it, I say as I hold a marshmallow inches away from his face. He gets up and tries to grab it, but I jump back, taunting him. He rushes towards me and knocks me to the ground. I look into his eyes, a feeling of playful lust washing over me. I pull my chin up so that our mouths touch, gently kissing him. He kisses back, slowly feeling around for my hand. Ha! Gotcha! He grabs the marshmallow from me and laughs. I giggle and get off the ground, shaking my head at him. Well played, Marcus, I laugh to myself as I grab myself a marshmallow. A half hour passes as we laugh and talk about the good times we've had together these past few years. It feels like just yesterday that we had our first date. I wonder when he's going to propose, I think to myself as I look at his grinning face lit up by the fire in front of us. I watch him roast another marshmallow when I hear something. I quickly turn my head in the direction of the noise. I look around and see nothing around us. It must have just been a branch or something, I thought as I looked back at Marcus, who was unfazed, just enjoying his toasted treat. Once again, my head shoots over to where the sound came from, but this time I'm a bit worried. Hey Marcus, you heard those branches snap, right? I look at him, my fingers intertwining with each other nervously. Yeah, it's probably just a squirrel, or at most a fox or something. Don't worry. Besides, I have bear spray right here, see? He pulls up the can of animal repellent to reassure me. Yeah, I guess we're okay. The fire dies down, and we're both in our sleeping bags, slowly dozing off. I hear Marcus start to snore as I fall into a deep sleep myself, but then I hear it again. I open my eyes and lay still. This time, I can hear rustling in the bushes, meters away from the tent. It's nothing. You're overreacting. It's just a small animal like he said, I thought to myself, trying to calm myself down. Something just didn't feel right. The hairs at the back of my neck were standing straight up. My gut was telling me that something worse was lurking along the tree line. Marcus, I shook him, trying to wake him up. Marcus, I whispered a little louder. Ugh, what is it? He sat up and rubbed his eyes. There's something outside. It's freaking me out, I say, as I pull the sleeping bag up closer to my nose. Would it make you feel better if I went out to check on it? He slowly gets out of his sleeping bag. Yeah, I guess, but be careful. I don't want you to get hurt. Don't worry, I'm the great Marcus. Nothing can get me, he jokes as he waves the bear spray in front of him. He gets his shoes on and unzips the tent. He first peeks his head out to make sure there's nothing immediately outside. Once he notices there's nothing there, he gets out. I laid there for what felt like forever before becoming concerned. I checked my phone. 2:36 a.m. He left 7 minutes ago. He should have been back by now. I put my phone down and a wave of panic fills my body. I grab a flashlight and quickly put my sandals on. I gently unzip the tent and turn on the flashlight. I look around and don't see him standing anywhere. Marcus, I whisper loudly. Marcus, this isn't funny anymore. Please come out. I flash my light towards an open path just behind the trailer. That's when I see blood. My heart starts pounding as the worst comes to mind. I don't want to follow the trail, but I know that if it's for Marcus and he's alive, I need to help him. The trail is pretty wide, so it's not that intimidating, but the fact that there's blood that could very well be my boyfriend's didn't really help. As I continued down the path, the blood trail was getting smaller and smaller until it just stopped. It was as if whatever the blood was coming from just stopped bleeding. I looked back, only to see I was nowhere near close to my tent or the trailer anymore. My heart started to beat faster as I realized I was away from any other form of shelter at all, and I had nothing on me but a flashlight. I still didn't know where Marcus was, and now that the blood trail is gone, I'm not sure if I will even find him at all. "Marcus," I start whispering again, tears starting to form in the corners of my eyes as I think of all the horrible scenarios that could have happened. "I'm here," Marcus whispers, back deep from within the woods. "Marcus, where are you?" I call out, wiping the tears from my face. Why would Marcus whisper for me? He could just come out. "Help, I'm in here," say the whispers coming from in the woods, just to the right of me. "Don't worry, Marcus, I'm going to help you," I reply as I timidly leave the trail. As I walk deeper into the woods, I hear him whisper every few minutes, calling for me. Something still doesn't feel right about it, but I need to reach him. As I creep farther into the woods, I start to grow more uneasy. If Marcus was truly okay and calling for me, he would have just met up with me by now. Why get me to come deeper into the woods? I point my flashlight towards the ground, making sure not to step in a hole or trip over a tree root. I notice there's a small blood trail starting to form again. The fear grows in me, stronger than ever before. Why now? I've ventured so deep into these woods. I've heard my boyfriend's whispers for help. Where's this blood coming from? My flashlight continues to point down as I follow this steadily growing blood trail. I notice there's something just where the tip of the light stops to touch. I stop dead in my tracks and slowly reels the flashlight to reveal a horror like no other. Marcus's lifeless body hanging stiffly from the tree in front of me. I drop to my knees and try to hold in the scream clawing its way out of my throat. I didn't know whether to break down or throw up. I couldn't believe my eyes. When did this happen? How could this happen? I was trying to process so many things at once, but then it dawned on me. It wasn't Marcus who was whispering to me all this time. I slowly stood up and turned off my flashlight. The hairs on the back of my neck rose again and the horrible gut feeling filled my stomach. Before I could even think at all, I hear it. I slowly opened my eyes to the muted bleating of my alarm clock. Why is the damn thing so quiet? How long has it been going off? I keep the shades drawn in my room as the east-facing window lets light in way earlier than I prefer, and I have no idea what time it is. I roll over to check it and see that the display on my alarm clock is very dim. Great, I'll have to get a new one. Luckily, I've only overslept by about 15 minutes. Fine, I can deal with that. I'm just going to have to rush a little bit. Not the worst thing in the world. Getting out of bed, I stagger sleepily to the bathroom in the dark. I flip on the light, and for some reason that too is very dim. Barely half the light it normally puts out. What the hell? So it's not just my alarm clock. Maybe there's some type of problem with the wiring. I answer the call of nature, and about halfway through I suddenly realize that, and this is going to sound a little strange, but I can barely hear the sound of my piss hitting the water. What the hell is going on here? Am I somehow losing my senses of sight and hearing? Confused and beginning to worry, I turn towards the shower and reach for the handle to turn on the water. I crank it over, expecting the hot flow to pour from the overhead fixture. Instead, a barely audible hiss of gas begins to seep from the shower head, and the worst smell I've ever encountered fills my bathroom. Gagging, I hurriedly flip the handle back down and hightail it out of the room, flipping the fan on as I go by, and slamming the door closed behind me. What the fuck was that about? It smelled like everything that had ever died had somehow gotten lodged in the pipes, and turning on my shower had released gases pent up since the beginning of time. I guess I'll have to call my building's maintenance man and let him know that something weird is going on here. I'll have him look at the issues I seem to be having with my electricity as well. Maybe he can, shed some light on the situation. I cross the room and pick up my cell phone. Finding his number in the contact list, I push send while trying to swallow the bile now backing up in my throat. I raise the phone to my ear, but instead of the ringing I expect, I hear crazy, maniacal laughter. Distant, as if coming from thousands of miles away, I hear this shrieking, insane laughing. "Hello?" I ask, noticing that the muted quality of sound also seems to extend to my own voice. Is someone there? But instead of a reply, the laughter begins to grow louder and louder, rising in volume and intensity as I pull the phone away from my face, staring in horror and confusion. The laughter abruptly ceases, and there's a moment of silence before the most horrific wail of agony you could possibly imagine begins to pour from my phone. In terror, I hurl my phone away from me, where it strikes the wall almost silently and shatters. What the actual fuck? What is happening here? Work can wait. I've got to get outside and figure out what the hell is going on. I rush back to my room, pulling on whatever clothes I find first, just some old jeans and a t-shirt, and almost run to the door of my apartment. I pull my worn sneakers on my feet and yank the door open. The lights in the hallway are the same as inside my place. Muted, weird looking almost as if they're projecting darkness at the same time as light. I don't know how else to explain it. I know that makes no sense, but what about any of this makes any sense? I take a deep breath and step out into the hall, and suddenly I'm standing in my bedroom again. Huh? I give my head a brisk shake and race back through my apartment to the door, which is still standing open. Without hesitation, I charge through it again, only to find myself running through my bedroom at the opposite end of my place. Again and again I've tried. I've been at it all goddamn morning. I don't understand what's happening here, but I'm scared and confused and alone with no way to contact anyone. I've tried shouting down the hall from inside my apartment, but my voice still makes almost no sound no matter how I scream, and no one has answered me. I've heard nothing back. Please, help me. Someone help me get out of here. I can't stay in here. Oh God, please help me. How do I get out of this place?